Hey everyone, Sky here to discuss The 40-Year-Old Virgin, starring Steve Carell, Catherine Keener, Paul Rudd, Romany Malco, Seth Rogen, Elizabeth Banks, Leslie Mann, Jane Lynch, and an early Jonah Hill, and directed by Judd Apatow. Now before I get into this movie, I should say, I have seen them all in theaters. Except for maybe this exception of the new movie that's coming on video on demand, but yeah, the reason I'm doing an Apatow series is because of The King of Staten Island, which trailer just came out not too long ago. That's coming out in next month. So I figured I'd just get it out of the way. And what do I think of 40-Year-Old Virgin? Well, let's get into the movie, shall we? Andy, played by Steve Carell, is an average 40-year-old who happens to be a virgin and works at an electronics store called Smart Tech. As he arrives to work, we meet Cal, played by Seth Rogen, before he was really well known talking about a woman fucking a horse, which, how does that work? That's what I don't want to get into that. But I'll never know, thank God, too, so. David, played by Paul Rudd, argues with her boss, Paula, played by Jane Lynch, about playing a Michael McDonald DVD for 2 years straight. And if you have the unrated edition, Jay, played by Romany Malco, arguing with Mooj about who gives the best customer service commission. Cal, David, and Jay invite Andy to a poker game in the store after hours, and they talk about sex stories that they've had in the past. And they find out Andy is a virgin, and I like these characters, and I like spending time with them because they're fucking hilarious. They tell everyone in the store that Andy is a virgin, and he runs out of the store, and David goes after him to calm him down. And Apatow and his editing skills are very quick. It's as quick as Cameron Crowe, better than Michael fucking Bay's editing, in my opinion. They go to a bar for $9 beer night, and meets Nikki, played by Mrs. Apatow herself, Leslie Mann, who's drunk out of her fucking mind, and because Andy can't drive a car, he drives a bicycle at best. Nikki drives the car and is drunk and can't pay attention to the road, and it is funny, but she shouldn't drive drunk as it's dangerous, but the scene is pretty funny. Andy meets Trish, played by Catherine Keener, who I reviewed before in Get the Motherfucker Out of Here. Anyways, moving on. And, he helps her look for something, and she works as the What We Sell Your Stuff on eBay store, and she randomly gives him her number, which is a sweet way to meet the future wife of the main character. Spoiler alert! And the guys celebrate the story, and he calls her and hangs up once in this round, and he asks Jay for advice, and he says waxing, and they go waxing Andy on his chest, and at one point his nipple, I hate saying this word, which the dialogue in these scenes are hilarious as a motherfucker. Cal advises Andy to ask a woman questions, for example, Beth, who works at a bookstore and played by Elizabeth Banks. It is a good advice for reasons I won't explain, but it is a great scene for advice reasons. Next scene, David gives Andy a box of pornography on VHS and everybody loves Raymond as well, and calls Trish round 2 pretending to be James from the telemarketing, and that was the second attempt of failure. And it is uncomforting to me to watch porn in general. The guys go to a date palooza during lunch break, and David's ex-girlfriend Amy bump into each other, and the scene was awkward. And Amy, believe it or not, is played by an early Mindy Kaling, who I find a little obnoxious in my opinion. After a party with the giant prostitute, Andy gets pissed at Jay, David, and Cal as they believe he doesn't have the balls to ask anyone out, but he goes to Trish's store to ask her out on a date, and a customer from the eBay store, played by an early Jonah Hill, before he was successful and knocked up in Superbad. And honestly, Superbad is what made him, in my opinion. And I like these scenes, and I do like the game David and Cal play, while Andy calls Trish for a third and final time, and this game, believe it or not, is called You Know How I Know You're Gay? And sorry to be insulting to those people that are gay or lesbians, but it's the funniest game in history, but it may be, again, insulting for the gay and lesbian group, and I'm sorry about that already. Andy and Trish go out on their first date and go back to her place and have sexual intercourse until Marla, who is the daughter of Trish and played by Kat Dennings, who honestly annoyed the hell out of me because she whines too much. I'm sorry, I'm going to be honest, she whines too much. But I do like the date scene. I thought it was a nice way to tone the movie down from Sexual Education for Dummies. I have to confess, this is a long movie at an hour and 56 minutes. I felt like 15 minutes should have been cut out of this movie. And Apatow has a bad habit of making comedies 2 hours plus. And honestly, kind of annoying to me. And I will talk about that a little bit more next week when I get to Knocked Up, because, yeah, that's a 2 hour plus comedy. Come on, you need to tone it down a little, pal. The second date happens and Andy becomes part of the family, and these scenes go on for quite a bit, as there's a scene where Marla got on my fucking nerves, and she fights with Trish about birth control meetings, and Andy takes Marla to the meeting, and I think that scene could have been cut out as it wasn't necessary. Trish and Andy have an argument, and Andy gets out of there and goes to Jay's wife's pregnancy party and acts bananas, meaning craziness, and runs into Beth as he's drunk. Meanwhile, Marla tells Trish to go to Andy's place, and Andy is having almost intercourse with Beth at her place, and Andy is uncomfortable. Sure, I can get there. And gets the hell out of there and goes back to Trish as she thinks he's some sex pervert. And she leaves, and Andy goes after her on a bicycle, and he crashes into a truck and confesses he's a virgin. What took you so long, pal? To Trish. And months later, they get married and finally have sexual intercourse, and they have a musical kind of an ending which didn't feel necessary. Again, I don't like musicals. You don't need to do that in your ending, Judd. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 8.0 out of 10. It is a really good, funny movie, but it's a little too long and needed about 15 minutes of editing, including the unnecessary musical ending. I feel Judd Apatow's editing is quick, but needs a little more work. But I enjoyed the movie and being around these characters, and that'll be probably the same case next week. I haven't seen it in a while, and it is fun to watch at times. At the same time, it's uncomfortable. But that's the same idea with Knocked Up. Come on. And I had fun with it. And Apatow, after this new movie, which I know is 2 hours and 16 minutes, you need to cut down that editing. Seriously. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next week I will be back with Knocked Up. And until next time, cut the editing down, Judd.